Welcome to Sola Church Online.
I'm Alan Rigg. This is my wife, Miranda Landers, and together we lead Sola Church in Santa Monica, California.
We meet in person and online on Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. Our in-person service is held indoors at Joslyn Park Auditorium, which is at 633 Kensington Road.
Yeah, in person is always the first best choice, but if you can't join us in person, we're so glad that you've joined us online. You can always find that service on our website, solachurch.life, as well as on Facebook and YouTube. Our handle there is @SolaChurchLA.
And we have a great service for you today. Let's worship.
You're the God of this city. You're the King of these people. You're the Lord of this nation. You are. You're the light in the darkness. You're the hope to the hopeless. You're the peace to the restless. You are. And there is no one like our God. There is no one like our God. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. You're the God of this city. You're the King of these people. You're the Lord of this nation. You are. You're the light in the darkness. You're the hope to the hopeless. You're the peace to the restless. You are. You are. There is no one like our God. There is no one like our God. Greater things are yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. Greater things are yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. Greater things are yet to come. Greater things are still to be done. There is no one like our God. There is no one like you, God. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done. We believe in you, God. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done in this city. Greater things have yet to come. Greater things are still to be done here. was praise. All I need to do is worship. Lord, I will just bow down. No, I'm just gonna stay still.
This is that time in our service when we worship with our giving. If you're just checking us out today, please don't feel obligated to participate. But if Sola Church is your church home, or if Sola Church Online has just been a blessing to you, it's super easy to make a one-time tax-deductible donation or even to schedule a recurring gift.
The easiest way is to scan the QR code on your screen, but you can always go to solachurch.life and click the tab at the top that says Give.
You know, last week I made a mistake. Right before we taped this segment, I looked at my phone for when Giving Tuesday was, and I thought I saw that it was going to be that Tuesday of last week. It didn't sound right to me, but I saw it and assumed that it had just snuck up on me. And so I said in the service that it was that Tuesday. It wasn't that Tuesday. It's Tuesday, November 28th. And that's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So just a reminder how important year-end giving is here at Sola Church.
Huge.
We bring in less each month than our minimum, budgetary needs, and we make up for that gap with year-end giving. So year-end giving not only helps us finish the year in the black, but it gives us some additional resources to implement new vision and new things heading into a new calendar year. So this year will be no exception. And you guys watching online are a huge part of that. About 1/3 of our giving comes from people who watch online. So we are so grateful for you.
Yes.
You are essential to what God is doing in and through Sola Church here in the west side of LA. So mark your calendars for Tuesday, November 28th. If it's your desire to practice some year-end giving, that's an important part of a lot of people's financial strategy.
Right.
Is year-end giving. If it's your intention to be a part of that, or if you're just open to that, you're thinking and praying about that, Tuesday, November 28th sort of marks the beginning of that year-end giving season. So thank you guys. Pray with us that God would just abundantly bless Sola Church this year.
And we're believing God is going to.
Yeah, amen. Yep.
Let's get into our time of teaching.
Have you ever gone to a restaurant and the wait is so long? You go ahead and put your name in, and you and others in your party are waiting and waiting and waiting, and maybe the time that it was supposed to take has come and gone. You're getting frustrated. Finally, you pull the plug. You make the decision that you're going to leave and you're going to meet at another restaurant. And so you drive across town to another restaurant, and you finally get seated and get ordered. And at some point, you look at the time and you realize that you probably didn't save yourself any time at all. Like if you had just stayed where you were, you probably would have been seated by then, maybe even be eating already. Have you ever done that? Yeah, I've done that. It's so hard to be patient. And it's not just me, like it's everybody. I think every single day here in Santa Monica, I find myself at an intersection where the light turns green, but there's nowhere to go. And so you have to wait, because you're not supposed to enter the intersection, right? Unless you can go through it. So immediately the people behind start honking. Like immediately, there's nothing you can do. There's nowhere you can go. If you go into the intersection and the light changes, then you're going to have a whole new set of people honking at you, shaking their heads, wondering why in the world you ever entered the intersection. Oh my goodness, why do we do that to each other? Do you ever feel like you always pick the wrong lane on the freeway, or you always pick the wrong line at the grocery store? Ugh, it just never seems to stop. And And all of that, well, it's one thing when the stakes are low. It's one thing to grow impatient when the stakes are low, but what about when we grow impatient and the stakes are high? When rash decisions might lead to terrible consequences. Well, let's go ahead and turn in the Bible to 1 Samuel chapter 13. We're calling this series in 1 and 2 Samuel Outliers. You know, an outlier is something that lies outside the rest of the group. If the group is like this, the outlier is like that. If the group is like that, the outlier is like this. And we've acknowledged that we are all imperfect people with imperfect lives, but by outliers, we mean those who have found another way of being in this broken world, a way made possible by this loving, giving, forgiving God that we meet in the pages of the Bible. So this week and next, we're going to be talking about impatience and about patience, about the balance between the two and just how we navigate this in our lives. We're going to call this message, Timing is Everything. Look with me at 1 Samuel 13, beginning in verse 1. It says, Saul, first king of Israel, Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel. 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in the mountains of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan, that's Saul's son, in Gibeah of Benjamin. The rest of the people he sent away, every man to his tent. And Jonathan attacked the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba. The Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, Let the Hebrews hear. Now all Israel heard it said that Saul had attacked a garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel had also become an abomination to the Philistines. And the people were called together to Saul at Gilgal. So, you know, Saul has dealt with multiple enemies now. He dealt with the Ammonites on the east, and now he's having to deal once again with the Philistines on the west. In chapter 11, we saw that Saul had gathered 330,000 men. Now he's just got 3,000 as of verse 2. And we read about this mission that Jonathan went on. Jonathan, commanding 1,000 of the 3,000, he went on this mission. That word abomination in verse 4. As a result of this mission, Israel was an abomination to the Philistines. Well, that word translated abomination means stink. It's kind of like the Philistines looked at what happened and they said, that stinks. We're going to bomb your nation. See what I did there? Abomination, bomb your nation. Yeah, I knew how bad it was and I still couldn't help myself. And so Saul, Jonathan, they have an international crisis on their hands. It's just a reminder of something we touched on last week, and that is how success leads to self-sufficiency. It might sound strange, but it's not easy to keep our head when things are going our way. When things aren't going our way, we tend to be more dependent on God. But when things are going our way, we tend to become a little bit more self-dependent. And Saul, well, you know, Jonathan does this thing, and it tells us in verse 4 that Saul blew the trumpet, literally and figuratively. He didn't just blow the trumpet, he was blowing his own trumpet. He took credit for what his son did. Like we read here that Jonathan was the one who accomplished this victory, but the people heard that it was Saul, and Saul was happy to take credit for it. You know, the scary thing about people who will take credit for what other people do is that it's a short step from that to taking credit for what God has done, like not giving God credit for what he has done in our lives. There's a measure of pretense in this. You know, pretension is the act of pretending or laying claim, the act of asserting right or title. We serve a credit-taking God, and rightfully so. He deserves the credit. You know, sometimes when we see pretentious people, we say things like, they act like they're God, or who do they think they are? God? Or who died and made them God? Well, when God takes the credit, he is God. But what happens when there's a collision of sorts between this credit-taking God and a credit credit-taking creature. The credit-taking creator and a credit-taking creature. Well, we see how this plays out, and we really get a look now at Saul's impatience. Look at verse 5. Then the Philistines gathered together to fight with Israel. Yeah, they'd been poked, and now they're ready to go. 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude, like more than could be numbered. And they came up and encamped in Michmash to the east of Bethaven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in danger, for the people were distressed, then the people hid in caves and thickets and rocks and holes and in pits. And some of the Hebrews crossed over the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. As for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him, trembling. Then he waited 7 days, according to the time set by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. So Saul said, "Bring a burnt offering and peace offerings here to me." And he offered the burnt offering, which, as we'll see, was not his place to do. So the people were outnumbered, verse 5, and we know that they were ill-equipped. We read that in verses 19 through 22. As a result, many of the 3,000 had gone AWOL in verses 6 and 7. They weren't just deserters, they were traitors. In chapter 14, verse 21, we learn that some of them switched sides. So Saul goes from 330,000 men in chapter 11 to 3,000 men in verse 2, and now he's down to 600 in verse 15. Wherever Saul looked, he saw defeat. This rendezvous with Samuel had been planned 2 years earlier. In chapter 10, verse 8, Samuel said to Saul, "You shall go down before me to Gilgal, and surely I will come down to you to offer burnt offerings and make sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days you shall wait, till I come to you and show you what you should do." Well, patient Samuel was late, and impatient Paul had to wait. You know, I can't help but wonder if part of what was happening here over the course of this 7 days is something we've talked about before, even recently, and that is slowing. The practice of slowing. Not that Saul chose it, but that Samuel chose it for him. We live in a time when life has just gotten so busy. I mean, I suppose it's typical to think like this as you grow older. I'm growing older. But it just feels like life is so much busier than it was, some years ago. Like weeks are longer and breaks are shorter and the pace of life is faster. Are you like me? Do you find it hard to keep all the balls in the air, to keep all the plates spinning? USA Today published an article some years back where they calculated that if we did all we're supposed to do to live what experts say is a balanced, well-rounded life, it would require 42 activities a day to get it all done. Oh my goodness. Now, I've joked about it before, but I love popcorn. If it's true that you are what you eat, I am a 6'1" popcorn ball. You guys remember Jiffy Pop popcorn, right? You had to hold it over a heat source and shake it in a circular motion until it popped. Like, did anyone ever successfully do that? As many times as I tried, I don't believe I ever succeeded. It either didn't pop or it burned or it was just a disaster every single time. I don't buy Jiffy Pop anymore. You know why? Well, not just because I was never successfully able to pop it, but because it takes too long. Even if it worked, it takes forever. Like I can stick a bag of microwave popcorn in the microwave, push a button that says popcorn, and voila. You know what the number one name in pizza is? It's Domino's, the company that promised to deliver in 30 minutes or less. You know what one of the biggest shampoos in the world is? Pert. Why? Because it combines shampoo and conditioner in one step. I mean, that was the only thing holding us back in life, was that extra time we were spending conditioning our hair. Think of what you'll do with all the time you'll save by doing it in one simple step. John Ortberg, who writes about this, said, "We worship at the shrine of the Golden Arches, not because they sell great food or even cheap food, but because it is fast food. And even after fast food was introduced, people still had to park their cars, go inside, order, and take their food to a table, all of which took time. So we invented the drive-through lane to enable families to eat in vans, as nature intended." Oh my goodness. I mean, what difference would it make if we slowed down? You know, I learned to drive in the state of Texas, and I remember studying the Texas Driver's Handbook. It had a drawing inside that illustrated something important, I think, about what we're talking about our pace of life and about the need for slowing. And what this chart showed was a driver's field of vision as their speed increases. When a car is sitting still, as a driver, we have a field of vision of 180 degrees or more. But at just 20 miles per hour, the field of vision is reduced by approximately 2/3. And at 40 miles per hour, the field of vision is further reduced by 2/5. At 60 miles per hour, the field of vision is barely wider than the beams of the headlights. So in a car, on the road, the faster we drive, the narrower our field of vision. And in life, the faster we live, the narrower our field of vision. That's why when we're feeling impatient, what we need most is a quiet place, a quiet time, and a quiet heart. If we won't cultivate patience by deliberately choosing to place ourselves in positions where we simply have to wait, God will do it for us. And what do we do while we wait? Well, earlier this year, we shared a message called The Upside of Downtime. I won't repeat all of that now, but it's important that when we're feeling impatient because we're waiting, that we think of the waiting not as an obstacle, but as an opportunity. And we can prepare for what's next by praying and by planning while we wait. Without prayers and plans, opportunity becomes inopportunity, but we can pray about the changes that need to take place. We can plan as if we expect God to answer our prayers. Picking it up in verse 10, it says, "Now it happened, as soon as he had finished presenting the burnt offering, that Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him, that he might greet him. And Samuel said, 'What have you done?' Saul said, 'When I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines gathered together at Michmash, then I said, the Philistines will now come down on me at Gilgal, and I have not made supplication to the Lord. Therefore I felt compelled and offered a burnt offering.' Samuel said to Saul, 'You have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought for himself a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be commander over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you.' And then Samuel arose and went up from Gilgal to Gibeah of Benjamin, and Saul numbered the people present with him, about 600 men." So you notice back in verse 10, as soon as he had finished, like no sooner did Saul finish doing what he had rashly decided to do, then Samuel showed up. You know, it doesn't always work like that. Are you at a place in your life where you're waiting and where you're impatient and where you're tempted to make a rash decision? Where you're tempted, like Saul, to take things into your own hands? I can't promise you that Samuel is going to show up any minute. You know, if you're waiting for something to happen financially, I can't promise that breakthrough is going to happen any minute. If you're waiting for something to happen in a relationship, I can't promise that breakthrough is going to happen any minute. If you're waiting for something to happen in the workplace, I can't promise you that that's going to happen any minute. I mean, on we could go with the examples, but the point is, I can't promise you that your Samuel is going to come any minute. But I also can't tell you how many times I and others have made rash decisions with terrible consequences only to have Samuel walk through the door immediately after. If only I'd waited a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. If only you had waited a few weeks, a few months, another year. I mean, how sad that, we've made mistakes like the mistake that Saul made, only to realize how completely unnecessary it was. I mean, in the best case scenario, Saul would have gotten nothing more than he was going to get anyway. But in the worst case scenario, he would ultimately get so much less. And that's what he got. He got the worst case scenario. It's kind of hilarious in verse 11 that before Saul has even told Samuel anything, Samuel says, "What have you done?" I mean, maybe he could see it for himself or someone had told him, but I can't help but wonder if it was the look on Saul's face. Like Saul had that look like, "Nothing. I didn't do anything." And Samuel knows better. Oh my goodness. And immediately Saul begins making excuses. "It's the soldiers' fault. They left me." "It's your fault, Samuel. You were late." The blame game, the blame shifting. Will Rogers, who of course 100 years ago bought land in Santa Monica, developed a ranch. I mean, we're not far here in our studio from Will Rogers State Beach. But Will Rogers said that there were two eras in American history: the passing of the buffalo and the passing of the buck. Right? I mean, it's so true. We all want to pass the buck. We may blame our environment. We may blame our spouse. We may blame our parents. Some of us blame the devil. The devil made me do it. Others of us even blame God. Someone said that to err is human and to blame it on the divine is even more human. We live in the age of the victim, man, the age of victimization. We think that no matter what we do, no matter what choice we make, no matter what consequences we bring upon ourselves, that somehow we are the victim. And there's pride in that. Pride tears down what God builds. God builds good things into our home life and pride tears it down. God builds good things into our professional life and pride tears it down. God builds good things into our spiritual life and pride tears it down. But you know what? Samuel wasn't buying it. And Saul, as I said, best case scenario, he gets nothing more than he would have gotten, but worst case scenario, he gets a lot less. And what a lot less looked like was that the dynasty that he might have had is declared over almost before it even began. He loses the dynasty. Samuel tells Saul that God's chosen someone else, someone with a heart after God's heart. In other words, someone who shares God's heart, someone who shares God's perspective and God's priorities and God's values. And although he's not named yet, Samuel is talking about David. We'll meet David just a few studies forward in our series. And he'll be a boy when we meet him, but he will grow into a man after God's own heart. All of which reminds us that Saul was not a man after God's own heart. God is patient. God is the most patient being in the universe. Over and over again, the Bible calls God long-suffering. But Saul was not patient. Saul was not long-suffering. He was not a man after God's own heart. Saul was someone who got ahead of God. We don't want to be people who get ahead of God. We don't want to be people who veer off to the right or who veer off to the left from God's plan for our lives. We might think about that as spiritual drift. Impatience fuels spiritual drift. I mentioned being just a few miles from Will Rogers State Beach. I can remember times going to the beach as a kid And like I'd be out in the water, you know, and you know, when you're a kid, man, you could just stay out there forever. Like I could be out in the water for a long time without even coming in, you know, so you're body surfing or you're on a boogie board and you're riding the wave in, but rather than, you know, walking up onto the beach afterwards, you turn around and go right back out. So you're in the water and eventually, you know, some unknown amount of time has passed and eventually you look back at the beach and your people are gone. Like your family, your friends, they're gone. And you start looking for them and you discover that they picked up everything and they moved way down the beach. And you're like, why would they do that? Why would they leave me here? You know what? They didn't. They didn't pick up anything. They didn't move anything. I was the one who moved. The tide, the current had taken me like I had drifted up or down the beach, you know, depending on the geography of it, the direction that the tide's going or whatever. But that kind of drift, we experience it spiritually. And it's not God who moved. It's us who moved. And so we want to learn to not allow impatience to fuel spiritual drift, where we get out ahead of God, where we get off to the right side of where God would have us to be, where we get off to the left side of where God would have us to be. But we want to be patient. We want to learn to wait on what God has for us when God has it. And we're talking about an entirely different mindset, an entirely different way of being in this world. We're talking about being an outlier. Imagine a kinder, more patient world. If we were to practice this, we could live in a world where we drove a little slower, honked a little less, were a little quicker to yield the right of way. A world where we waited patiently, where we let the guy behind us in line at the grocery store with only a few items move ahead of us, where we honor those who serve us. A world where we weren't in such a hurry to build our own resume that we could cheer for others. A world where we practiced slowing, making room for holy moments, for the divine in our life. A world where we made better choices, but didn't blame others when we fall or when we fail. Yeah, more of that. Father, help us to learn from Saul's experience to be patient. Help us to understand when we're feeling impatient that we need to stop and check ourselves. We need to force ourselves to tap the brakes, to practice a little bit of slowing, to make room for you in our life. Lord, I pray that in whatever part of life people watching this service might be tempted to get ahead of you, that you would give them patience right now. Help us not to make rash decisions that might have terrible consequences. Help us not to settle in a relationship because we've grown impatient. Help us not to cut corners at work because we've grown impatient. Help us, not to practice deceit to get ahead. Lord, there's just so many ways that impatience motivates us to do an end around. And the price is always so much greater than we think it's going to be. Help us to rest. Help us to wait. In the name of your Son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
And now it's time to fill out a Connect card.
Yeah, just go to the website, solachurch.life, and scroll to the bottom of the homepage. That's where the Connect card lives. It's a way for you to let us know that you watched online today. You can also request information about our virtual small groups. They're awesome. We'd love for you to join one.
And don't forget, go and follow Sola Church online.
Right? Everybody's favorite social media apps. We're on them all. So
too many to list.
Yeah, right. At Sola Church LA. Give us a follow, give us a like, leave a comment. Let's go. Spread the word.
And we hope that everyone has a great week, and we will see you next time at Sola Church Online.
Bye, everybody.